After my promotion, my family promised to celebrate with me. Instead, they went on vacation without telling me. When I called, my brother said, "Don't make this about you." 2 weeks later, I took action. Now they're flooding my phone, begging me to come back. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I thought family was everything. You hear that phrase a lot, family comes first, and for the longest time, I took it to heart. My family wasn't perfect, but we had our traditions, our way of doing things. We were close, or so I thought. I didn't realize how far things had drifted until something that should have been a moment of joy turned into a moment of bitterness and disappointment. About a month ago, I got a promotion at work. It wasn't just any promotion, it was a step up that I'd been working toward for years. I had put in countless hours, sacrificed personal time, and stayed late on more occasions than I could count. My coworkers knew how hard I had worked, and so did my boss. When the email came through confirming I had been promoted to a managerial position, I was ecstatic. I immediately wanted to share the news with my family. I expected a lot of excitement, maybe even a celebration. I picked up the phone and called my mom first. She answered on the third ring, always quick to pick up. "Hey, Mom. I've got some great news," I said, trying to hide the excitement in my voice. "Oh, what is it?" she asked, clearly eager to hear. "I got promoted." I nearly shouted. "They're making me a manager. I've been working toward this for so long, and it's finally happening." There was a slight pause on the other end of the line, but then she responded, "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you. You've worked hard for this. Really, really hard." I could tell she meant it. My mom was always supportive, but she was also practical. She didn't often get carried away with over-the-top celebrations, but I could feel her pride in her voice. She continued, "You know, we've been wanting to get together for a while now. Why don't we plan a little family dinner to celebrate?" It was such a simple offer, but to me, it meant everything. A small dinner with the people who had been there for me, supporting me all these years, seemed like the perfect way to mark the occasion. I immediately agreed. "Yes, that sounds great. Let me know when everyone's free." "Sure, we'll figure it out and get back to you. I'll talk to your dad and Jonah." Jonah was my brother, and although we didn't talk every day, we always managed to keep in touch when it mattered. We had a good relationship growing up, and I thought we still did. He was always busy with his own life, but I didn't think he'd mind taking some time to celebrate with me. As the days passed, I heard nothing about the dinner plans. I figured my parents were just working out the details, but as the weekend of my promotion approached, I decided to check in. It wasn't like me to be pushy, but this was important to me. I texted my mom, "Hey, are we still on for dinner this weekend?" I didn't hear back from her right away. I waited an hour before calling. When she finally picked up, she sounded distracted, almost hesitant. "Oh, honey, about that dinner. We actually had to adjust some plans," she said, her voice sounding softer than usual. "Jonah and I were talking, and we decided we're going to go on a little trip this weekend. It's last minute, but we thought it would be a good time for all of us to get away." I froze for a moment. "Wait, so you're not celebrating with me anymore?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't want to sound like I was making a scene, but I couldn't help the hurt that crept into my words. "Oh no, sweetie, it's not like that," she rushed to say. "We're still going to celebrate, just not this weekend. It's just that the timing didn't work out. We'll make it up to you, I promise." But the more she spoke, the less sincere it sounded. Something about her tone didn't sit right with me. I could tell she was trying to avoid upsetting me, but it didn't change the fact that I was upset. I was hurt. She wasn't even apologizing for changing plans without telling me. And Jonah, where was he in all of this? "I thought we had agreed on this weekend," I said, feeling a tightness in my chest. I was looking forward to it. I was counting on it. She didn't have much to say after that. She just repeated that they'd figure something out, and that was the end of the conversation. I hung up feeling a knot in my stomach. A trip? A last-minute trip? I had no idea how to feel. It wasn't just the fact that they'd gone on vacation. It was the fact that they hadn't even bothered to tell me about it. No heads up. No, "Hey, we're thinking about taking a trip. What do you think?" I was supposed to be the one who had made it, who had gotten this promotion. And yet, it felt like my accomplishment didn't matter at all. A few hours later, I called Jonah to ask him about it. "Hey, Jonah," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Mom said you guys are going on a trip this weekend. Why didn't you mention anything?" There was a noticeable pause on the other end of the phone. "Yeah, well, we didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's just a quick getaway, you know? We didn't want to interrupt the plans you had." I felt my face flush with frustration. "Interrupt the plans I had? You didn't even tell me about the trip until now. You knew I was waiting for us to celebrate." Jonah let out a long sigh. "Look, I get it. You're upset. But honestly, Don't make this about you. It's just a dinner. We're still family. Those words, the way he said it, so dismissive, as if my promotion wasn't worth celebrating, made my blood run cold. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I kept my voice steady. I've been working hard for this, Jonah. It's not just a dinner to me. I know, he said, but there was no real apology in his tone. But we're just doing this for us. It's not a big deal. I hung up the phone feeling completely drained, like I had just been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe it. The one person I thought would understand, would have my back, he was just brushing me off. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were all in on it together, that they hadn't even considered how this might make me feel. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at my phone. I wanted to text my mom, to call Jonah again, but something stopped me. Instead, I spent hours thinking about how to get my point across, how to show them that I wasn't going to be treated like this. I wasn't going to sit around and let them walk all over me. Not again. And then, just before I went to bed, I decided what I needed to do. They wanted to go on a trip without me? Fine. I would make sure they knew exactly how it felt to be excluded. It wasn't until the next morning that I finally made up my mind about what I was going to do. I woke up early, my mind already racing, turning over the conversation I'd had with Jonah the night before. It wasn't even just the lack of the celebration, it was the way they dismissed me. The way Jonah acted like my promotion didn't matter, like it wasn't worth celebrating. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I knew that I had every right to feel that way. I wasn't going to let it slide. I spent the day doing my usual routine, but I wasn't really focused. I kept checking my phone, half expecting an apology, or at least some kind of acknowledgement. Maybe my parents would call and explain themselves, or Jonah would send a message apologizing for how he'd acted. But nothing came. It was almost as if they assumed I would just move on from it, like it was no big deal. It was that night, as I sat down to dinner alone, that I realized something. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation. I had worked hard to get where I was, and this promotion was my victory, no one else's. They may have been the ones I was hoping to celebrate with, but I didn't owe them anything. And if they were going to keep treating me like an afterthought, then maybe it was time to remind them who I was. I didn't make any drastic moves right away. That night, I sat with my thoughts, figuring out what my next step would be. What could I do to make sure my family knew how this felt? How to make them understand that I wasn't going to be left out in the cold like this? It wasn't about revenge, not in the petty sense. It was about asserting myself, about showing them that I deserved better. I wasn't going to be the one always making the effort, always bending over backwards while they got to do whatever they wanted. They needed to know that I had a limit, and they had crossed it. I spent the next couple of days in quiet contemplation, doing things that kept my mind busy. I went to work, took walks in the park, read a few books. But all the while, the idea kept growing inside me like a seed sprouting in the back of my mind. I had to make a decision, one that would get their attention. I couldn't just wait around for them to realize they'd messed up. I needed to do something that would make them see me, really see me. By the end of the week, I had my plan. I took some time off work. I knew it was risky, but I didn't care. They had all left without telling me about their trip, and here I was, stuck with nothing but my disappointment. The least I could do was give myself a little break, a chance to get away from all the tension. But I wasn't just going to go on any ordinary trip. This was going to be something special. I didn't need my family's permission, and I wasn't asking for their approval. I planned it all out, booked a place in a small town a few hours away, far enough that no one could just pop in and check on me. I found a charming little cabin near a quiet lake. It seemed like the perfect place to clear my head, maybe do a little soul-searching. And then, when I was ready, I'd let them know. I didn't have to explain myself, but I was going to make sure they understood how their actions had made me feel. They would know that I wasn't going to just let this slide. This wasn't going to be about a quick getaway from me. It was going to be a reminder that I was important, that my feelings mattered too. The day before I left, I reached out to Jonah. I kept it brief, calm even, but I could tell something was off when I sent the text. He hadn't tried to reach out since our last conversation, so I figured this was the best time to say something. "Hey Jonah," I typed. "I've decided to take a little trip myself. I'm leaving tomorrow for a few days. You guys enjoy your vacation. I'm sure you'll have a great time." It wasn't the message I'd originally thought about sending. I had considered a long, angry text, something that would let him know exactly how I felt. But I stopped myself. I didn't need to explain myself to him anymore. I didn't need to beg for attention or affection. Instead, I kept it simple, a little colder than usual, but still polite. I didn't expect a response, and for a while, I didn't get one. I packed my bags and left for the cabin the next morning. It was a quiet drive, the kind of journey that gave me time to think without distractions. The air outside was crisp, and there was a hint of rain, but it felt peaceful. I needed peace. I needed to be away from the noise of everything, especially my family's neglect. By the time I arrived, the cabin was everything I had hoped for: simple, cozy, with a view of the lake that stretched for miles. I could feel the tension in my chest begin to ease, just a little, as I unpacked. I spent the evening reading and staring out the window, taking in the view. I thought about my family, about how things had gotten so complicated. But at the same time, I realized something. This moment, this time away, was exactly what I needed. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. The next few days passed slowly. I enjoyed the peace of the cabin, and when I wasn't reading, I took long walks around the lake. There was something almost therapeutic about the isolation. I didn't feel lonely. Not really. I was just free. It gave me space to process everything that had happened, to reflect on the family dynamic that had slowly shifted without me noticing. On the fourth day of my trip, I woke up to a series of missed calls. The first one was from my mom. The second was from Jonah. I hadn't expected to hear from anyone, at least not this soon. I felt a strange mix of curiosity and resolve. It was time. I listened to the voicemails, and it was exactly what I thought it would be: desperate, apologetic, and full of excuses. "Sweetie, we're really sorry. We should have told you about the trip." My mom's voice cracked over the phone. "It's just, we didn't think it would hurt you so much. Please, let's talk when you get back." Jonah's voicemail was a little more direct, but there was a certain urgency in his tone. "Look, I get it. I messed up. You're upset, and I'm sorry, but this whole thing is getting out of hand. Can we just talk?" They weren't angry. They weren't dismissive anymore. They were apologizing, begging, even. But I didn't call back. Not yet. I spent another day at the cabin, reading, reflecting, and letting their voicemails sink in. It was strange how their voices, especially Jonah's, sounded so sincere. But it was too little, too late. They had made me feel like I wasn't worth their time, and now they were scrambling to make it right. But it wasn't about apologies anymore. It wasn't just about being excluded from their little vacation. It was about the principle. They thought they could do whatever they wanted, leave me out in the cold, and then expect everything to go back to normal when they came crawling back. But I wasn't going to let them off that easy. I didn't call them back, not at first. I needed them to stew a little, to realize the weight of what they had done. I wanted them to feel the absence, the silence, and wonder if they had really lost me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about one missed celebration. It was about a pattern, a history of them prioritizing their own needs and desires over mine. I had spent so many years trying to be the dutiful daughter, always there when they needed me, and for what? So they could take me for granted? No more. I wanted them to understand the cost of their actions. I wanted them to feel the sting of exclusion the same way I did. So, I began to plan, carefully, methodically. I spent the next few days making sure my family knew that I wasn't coming back anytime soon. I didn't respond to any of their calls or texts. But I did send one message to Jonah, just one. "I've been thinking a lot, and I've realized that I don't need to keep trying to earn your approval. I've spent years trying to make you all proud, but it's clear to me now that none of you really care about what I've accomplished. So I'm going to focus on myself for a while." I didn't expect him to respond immediately, but I knew he would. And when he did, I was ready. He sent a simple text. "What do you mean?" "I'm sorry. We all want you to be happy. Don't be like this." I didn't answer for hours. I was in no rush. Eventually, I responded, "I'm done chasing. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm done being the one who makes all the efforts. If you really cared, you would have shown up when it mattered." That was it. The message was delivered, and there was nothing more to say. I could feel the tension building in me, the satisfaction of finally standing up for myself, but it wasn't enough yet. Not by a long shot. The following week, I returned home, but I wasn't in any hurry to get back to normal. I didn't call anyone. I stayed quiet, keeping my distance. It was time for them to sweat a little. I decided to show up at the family's usual dinner gathering a few days later, unannounced. I didn't tell them I was coming. I wanted to see their faces when they realized that I wasn't just going to come running back into their arms. They had to learn that things wouldn't just go back to the way they were. Not this time. I arrived right as they were sitting down to eat, the table filled with the usual suspects: my parents, my brother Jonah, and a couple of distant relatives who I hadn't seen in years. They all looked up in shock when I walked through the door. My mom's face immediately softened, a little too quickly, like she was trying to hide her guilt. Jonah's expression was a mix of surprise and something else, regret, maybe? But there was no apology in his eyes, no real acknowledgement of what had happened. "Hi," I said, casually, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "Mind if I join you?" The room fell silent. My parents exchanged awkward glances. My mom, always the peacemaker, was the first to speak. Of course, honey, we didn't expect you to come by tonight. But please, sit down. Jonah's eyes flickered toward me, then to the empty chair at the table. I could feel the tension in the air as I pulled out the chair and sat down. The silence stretched for what felt like a lifetime, but I didn't speak. I just watched them. So, how was your trip? I finally asked, my voice calm but carrying an edge I hadn't intended. Mom, Jonah, you guys seem to have a great time. Where'd you go? The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. They had no choice but to answer. Jonah shifted in his seat, and my mom fumbled with her napkin before speaking up. We went to the coast, she said, her tone light. It was just a short getaway, nothing too extravagant. We didn't mean to make you feel left out. That was when Jonah spoke up, his voice a little defensive. It wasn't like that. We thought it was best to just get away for a bit. We didn't think you'd take it so badly. My mom shot him a look, like she was telling him to shut up, but it was too late. The damage was already done. I could feel my anger rising, but I didn't want to show them that I was affected. Not anymore. Right? I said slowly. Because when I told you about my promotion, you guys just decided a vacation was more important. No phone call. No heads up. Just, oh, by the way, we're leaving. I could see Jonah stiffen, the defensiveness in his posture increasing. Don't make this about you. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just didn't want to turn it into a big thing. I laughed, but it wasn't a genuine laugh. It was cold, mocking. A big thing? You know, when I got my promotion, I was expecting to celebrate with my family. But it turns out, you guys didn't care enough to even be there for me. I could feel the shift in the room. My mom was looking at me like she didn't quite know what to say, like she didn't understand where all of this was coming from. But it was too late for apologies now. Too late for half-hearted reassurances. Jonah stood up abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. This is ridiculous. You're making a scene over nothing. I left the dinner, my heart pounding in my chest, but there was no doubt in my mind. I wasn't turning back. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally in control of the situation. I wasn't going to let my family walk all over me anymore. Over the next few days, my phone was flooded with messages and calls from my mom and Jonah. At first, I ignored everything. I was still furious, and I wasn't about to let them think they could just apologize and everything would go back to normal. I needed them to understand the depth of what they'd done. Finally, a couple of days later, I decided to listen to their voicemails. My mom's voice was shaky and full of guilt. Sweetheart, please. We're so sorry. We didn't realize how much this would hurt you. You've always been so understanding, and we took you for granted. Please, we'll make it right. Come home. Jonah's message was more direct, but equally apologetic. Look, I get it now. I should have been there. We all should have been there. I'm sorry, okay? Can we just talk? I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't ready to forgive them yet, but a part of me knew that they were sincere. They were starting to see what they had done, and I could tell they were worried they had pushed me too far. They didn't want to lose me. After a few days of reflecting, I made the decision to meet them. I didn't want to carry this anger around anymore, and I realized that if I kept holding on to it, it was only going to hurt me. So, I agreed to meet them at a small cafe in town. It was the first step in trying to heal the rift, but I wasn't going to make it easy for them. They needed to understand that things couldn't just go back to normal without consequences. When I walked into the cafe, my mom and Jonah were already sitting at a table. Jonah looked a little uncomfortable, but my mom was doing her best to put on a brave face. They both stood up when I approached, but I could tell they were hesitant, unsure of how I would react. I sat down, but I didn't immediately speak. I let the silence hang for a moment, just to let the tension settle in. Finally, it was my mom who broke it. I know we've hurt you, and we've taken you for granted, she began, her voice filled with regret. We're sorry. We should have celebrated your promotion with you, and we shouldn't have left you out. We just didn't think it would be a big deal. I looked at her, trying to read her face. Part of me wanted to snap back, to tell her that it wasn't just about the celebration, but about how they always made me feel invisible, how they prioritized everything else over me. But I held it in. This wasn't the time for more anger. I'm glad you're acknowledging it, I said, keeping my tone steady. But you have to understand, this isn't the first time I've been pushed aside. I've always been there for you guys, and it feels like you don't even notice when I need you. Jonah nodded slowly. I didn't get it at first, but I see now. I should have been there for you. We should have been there for you. I'm really sorry. I watched them, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like they were genuinely sorry, not just because they were trying to fix things to make themselves feel better, but because they realized they had actually hurt me. They were starting to see how much they had taken me for granted. I don't want things to be like this, I continued, my voice softening. But I also need you to know that this isn't just a small thing for me. This hurt, and I'm not going to just forget about it. I need to feel like I matter to you, not just when it's convenient." There was a long pause as they both processed what I had said. I could see my mom's eyes welling up with tears. Jonah, on the other hand, just looked exhausted, like he had finally realized how much I had been carrying all these years. "I know I haven't been the best son," Jonah said quietly, "and I'm really sorry. I'm going to work on being better." We sat there for a while, talking, and though the conversation wasn't easy, it felt like a weight was starting to lift. I wasn't ready to forget everything, but it was a step in the right direction. I needed to see that they truly understood, and this felt like a good first step. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift. My family reached out more often. My mom made an effort to include me in family plans, and Jonah started checking in on me more than he ever had before. We weren't completely healed, but I could see that they were trying. And for the first time in a long time, I was willing to give them the chance to prove that they could be there for me. But it wasn't easy. Every time they made a mistake, I reminded them of what had happened, not out of bitterness, but because I needed them to understand that this wasn't something I was just going to brush off. I wasn't going to let them take me for granted anymore. It took time, but slowly, things improved. My relationship with my mom and Jonah didn't go back to what it had been, but maybe that was a good thing. We were learning how to respect each other's boundaries, to value each other in a way we hadn't before. The dynamic had shifted, but in a way that allowed us to start fresh, on more equal footing. As for me, I learned something important about myself during this process. I didn't need their approval to feel good about my accomplishments. I had earned my promotion on my own, and I didn't need anyone else to validate it. The experience had shown me that sometimes, the people who should support you the most are the ones who let you down. But that doesn't mean you can't still stand up for yourself and demand the respect you deserve.